All right, folks, it's time for the much adored, universally adored Malsberg panel. And as we effort Richard Miniter, who's got a great new book out. I know you folks in the control room have a shot of that book when he comes on. We are joined by Fred Fleitz, the chief analyst for Lignet. And hello, sir. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to be here again, Steve. Thanks.
Well, it's my pleasure. All right, let's start. We just had John Bolton on the show, and you know, he talked about basically how by his words, Barack Obama has encouraged Vladimir Putin to go further in Ukraine, certainly, possibly test some other Baltic states.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, we've exactly right. I mean, we've simply seen a policy of weakness. We've seen ultimatums and threats that they've laughed at, and I'm really worried what this will mean to other rogue states such as Iran and North Korea.
Sure, because they're all watching, as Ambassador Bolton indicated, and words have meaning. And you know, when the president says, and I'd love to get your take on this, Fred, when the president at the same time kind of threatens that you know, if Putin goes further and dares to challenge a NATO state, you know, he cited the part of the treaty that calls for one to defend you know, all, and or all to defend one. And but you got to, you know, what is Putin thinking? Because here's a guy who's drawn a line in the sand, you know, with Syria and with others, and has done nothing about it.
Well, I have two thoughts on that. I first of all think he's challenging NATO. I think there's a real possibility of that. There may be 100,000 Russian troops on the Ukraine border right now, and we need to take seriously the possibility that there could be imminent attack. On the other hand, we have to consider the possibility that it could be that all Putin wanted to do was to seize Ukraine because he thinks it's, Crimea, because he thinks it's historically Russian. I think that's unlikely, but we don't know his motivations, and that's what makes this so dangerous.
Yeah, and you know, in Kiev and the whole thing. Okay, we now say hello to Richard Miniter. Hello, Richard. How are you, sir?
Yeah. Steve.
Welcome aboard. Okay, we just had Ambassador John Bolton on, and we were talking about, among other things, Obama's words towards Putin. But we also touched on Obama's trip to Saudi Arabia, Richard, which is taking place today, his meeting with the king, and the strained relations between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and how Barack Obama is a man who has managed to bring together, to an extent, for certain common strategic interests, Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, America's friends are worried and its enemies are laughing. I mean, Putin is triumphant with his capture, his illegal seizure of the Crimea, and the Saudis are afraid. I mean, talking to senior Saudi intelligence officials over the past few weeks, they're very concerned about Obama's secret outreach to Iran for more than a year and a half through the country of Oman. There have been secret negotiations in the Iranians and the Obama White House, which have just become public. And that distresses the Saudis because their biggest fear is an atomic Iran. They know that the Iranians are the largest funders of terrorism in the world. The Iranian state-run broadcasts have admitted to harboring more than 500 al-Qaeda members inside their country. They're not turning them over to the U.S. or to other allies. And the Iranians are backing Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, which is carrying out a bloody civil war against his own people, which has killed more than 100,000 civilians. Of course, Obama drew a red line in the sand. He said if they ever use chemical weapons against civilians, and there was objective proof of it, the U.S. would act. When that proof emerged, Obama made a deal with Putin instead of acting. And so the Russians are triumphant. They feel that their interests are being strengthened. Of course, the only naval base the Russians have outside of their own territory is in Syria. So in the Mediterranean coast of Syria. So all these things are interconnected, and they see that Iran and Russia are rising, and the Saudis are afraid. So the only partner they can find in the region is, ironically, Israel.
Yeah, that is very ironic, is it? To say the least, Fred, you agree?
I think that's exactly right. We're pushing a deal on the Iranian nuclear program that's easily reversible, that gives Iran the right to enrich uranium that has alienated Israel and Saudi Arabia. I mean, this deal simply makes no sense. And I think the repercussions will be severe. It will take us many years to rebuild the credibility we have lost just from this one deal that the Obama administration is responsible for.
Yeah, no.
And let's be clear,
Yeah.
too, where Iran is getting its uranium. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, Iran itself only has a 3 to 6 month supply of uranium in its own soil. And it's clear that they're importing that uranium from Russia and from former Soviet republics nearby Russia with Russia's assistance. And let's also not forget there are 300 Russian scientists working at the Iranian atomic facility at Bushehr. So the Russians are heavily involved in the Iranian nuclear buildup, which is something that has caught the Saudis' attention too.
Yeah, and Richard, of course, you best-selling author. You've written the book "Leading from Behind," and it seems that is apropos to this president, and no matter what the crisis, no matter what the situation, when it comes to our foreign policy.
That's right. I mean, Obama seems to want to have the foreign policy of Canada or of Belgium, where you spend most of your time in international forums like the UN, talking and letting other people lead. But the United States is unique. It uniquely has the military power to enforce its will around the world. Even Britain, when their British sailors were taken hostage by the Iranians and held for months, the British Navy no longer had the power to threaten in any way the Iranian Navy. The Iranian Navy is much bigger. To put this in perspective, the British Army is smaller than the Illinois National Guard. The Texas Air Guard has more airplanes than all of our European allies combined. So the United States is unique in its global reach and its military power. And if you want to have a foreign policy like Canada or Belgium, you need to have an America behind you. And that's what Barack Obama doesn't seem to understand.
Fred, in the next, well, I guess we have to see how this crisis plays out. But what's the next crisis? I mean, when Obama stands there and says that Russia is not a global power, and that he's more concerned, the biggest threat to us is a nuke going off in Manhattan. I'd love to get Richard's take on that, too. The specificity of it kind of freaked me out. What's the next crisis after Putin, do you believe?
Well, there's several possibilities. North Korea recently tested no-dong mobile missiles with a range of 1,000 miles. North Korea is worried that we're not paying attention to them. I think that's coming down the pike. It may come to a point where even the Obama administration has to admit that Iran is not cooperating, is not making significant concessions on its nuclear program. And then what if Russia invades eastern Ukraine or decides to invade the Baltic states or other states where there are Russian-speaking minorities? There's a lot of possibilities.
And Richard, talking about the president's statement about the nuclear bomb going off in New York, he was on the defensive in that question, in that answer. And I just worry about the fact that, he might have said something that was actually on his mind as opposed to a hypothetical.
Well, it's certainly, they've installed new radioactivity monitors in the New York subway system. So if you're getting radioactive medicine, chemotherapy, or drinking radioactive dye to have your doctor look at your heart, you now have to carry a special card because police will stop you, NYPD will stop you in the New York subway. So this has been something that's been on the mind of counterterrorism planners for years. But there are always threats against New York prime target, because there are so many fatwas existing for any terrorist group to take advantage of against the city of New York. So it might well be something the president was briefed on. But let's talk about something about North Korea just quickly.
Yeah, quickly. We only have about 20 seconds. Go ahead.
North Korea is a crazy dictatorship, but it's not independent. It depends on China, just the same way that Iran depends on Russia. Our real enemies are China and Russia, and they're supporting these proxy states. And Obama is focused on proxies, not on the source of the real threat.
Fred Fleitz, we'll see you in the next hour on the panel. Richard Miniter, thank you so much for joining us, and appreciate it. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Rubin, columnist at the Washington Post, author of the Right Turn column. We'll talk Christie, and we'll talk a lot more. Christie with a press conference today in the wake of his lawyer's report saying he did no wrong, and a resignation at the Port Authority in New Jersey on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.
We don't just talk about the news, we talk to those making news. This is the Steve Malzberg Show. What you